Hey, kia ora, Markie here, looking particularly grizzled and feeling particularly grizzled. So excuse me, I just got over, I'm just getting over part 2 of a double whammy virus. So being in a different continent, I think I'm more vulnerable to some of the bugs that they've got over here. So I had like a cold, which I threw off quite quickly. I was feeling very kind of pleased with myself, and then it went into a sinus infection, and that was horrible. But I was febrile. I was kind of feverish and weird throughout. Sorry, I shouldn't sniff. Throughout the whole of that period. So I think it's just starting to shift. I'm feeling a bit better, and I'm in that kind of weird stage where I'm kind of tired but restless, and sort of, so I should be doing something else. There's lots of things I should be doing that I'm not doing right now, and instead I'm doing a video on quite a bizarre subject, really, which is something that's kind of just got under my skin a little bit, because I like to use YouTube. I use it like my TV, and I like weird things, as you probably gathered if you've watched any of my videos. I like, I guess that's kind of what defines, maybe one of the threads that runs through all the different videos is I'm always interested in what lurks beyond, behind and beneath things, the unseen, so if it's a psychological condition, what's driving that psychological condition, that's my fascination. And that's why I'm kind of quite interested in, occult and religion and spirituality and things like that. So, and politics and how people behave, all kinds of, that kind of stuff, really. So I look for, and because I've got ADHD and my boredom threshold is very low, so I'm always looking for something that's kind of exciting. I can't kind of satisfy myself with reading an article on country gardens. I've got to go for the most dramatic. So I'm always looking for kind of extremes in terms of things that I look for my sort of entertainment or my reading pleasure or my YouTube pleasure. So hence one of my interests is in spirit possession, and I've done a video on that, and that's partly what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I suggest you watch that video series because that will give you more of a sense of where I'm coming from on that subject. But it's not absolutely essential. I won't take umbrage. I have an open mind about spirit possession, and I have some theories about it. But I'm also aware of how it's viewed in Christianity and different branches of Christianity and in different contexts. So I think it's a really fascinating topic, and I think it's possibly real. I think it's also probably quite rare, and I think it's not what people think it is. Okay. So that's kind of my take on that, really. But basically, I come from an open mind, and none of these videos look at me playing with me. I don't normally have my hair down these days, so I'm looking in the mirror. It's funny, this is a video about narcissism. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. That's terrible, isn't it? So narcissism's the other side of the equation that we're going to discuss. So that's where I come from, and I find it very. I find it a really kind of exciting subject. I like it in fiction. I read a lot of, read and watch a lot of horror fiction and things like that. That's the kind of thing I like. I was actually starting to write a horror novel as well. So that was the one side of things. Okay. So the other thing that I'm obviously as a psychotherapist, I'm interested in psychology, and I'm very interested in the dark side of psychology. So things like psychopathy and narcissism. I've done a video series on psychopathy. Psychopathy isn't what people think it is either. Nothing is what people think it is, actually. Really, apart from maybe oranges. So I'm fascinated by narcissism, and what I found lately in my YouTube surfing is that these two things have come together. They've suddenly become blended, and obviously, YouTube knows what I like and sends me stuff, so I get all this stuff about, narcissism and demonic possession, and I thought, oh, okay, interesting. And I've listened to Oh God, not masses of videos, but some quite long ones. I listened to one series which was two-parter. I think it was about an hour and a half each part, and it was a Catholic site. And what what kind of struck me with that one was that I thought it was a brilliant exposition of narcissism. The presenter was really describing narcissism well, but was not describing what the topic of the video was about, the link between narcissism and possession. They were just kind of, it was kind of assumed, but not explained. And I found this with a load of other videos. So I think I'm wondering is this just a trend? Is this just something that's popular and doing around? So this is a kind of reaction video to this. So narcissists, so basically these are people who, there's a whole slew, I say whole slew, I haven't come across masses, but I've come across enough, all saying very much the same thing, that narcissists are more likely to be demon possessed. Most of these come from a Christian perspective, and some of them are quite a fundamentalist Christian perspective. So they're kind of proposing the belief, because for them it is a belief, it's not a theory, it's a belief, that narcissists are more likely to be demon possessed. Okay, and not one of these videos has, in my opinion, has given any good reasons to justify it, to justify this argument, and I'm open to it. I have a very open mind. So if somebody could present me with a good argument or a good case for why this is likely to be the case and what evidence they've seen, I would be very interested. But nothing has convinced me. I guess a few of the ideas have I think had some relevancy. So one video talked about narcissists being very fantasy prone, but then even then, why would that necessarily link them with demonic possession, and inwardly focused, which introversion to me doesn't kind of it's not suggestive of demonic possession. So I'm intrigued, and I'd really love it if you could, if you watch this video, if you could respond with any argument. Hopefully during the course of this video, and as I think aloud, I might come across some arguments in support of it myself. But at the moment I haven't. So what? First of all, I'm wondering is, when these people say narcissist, and it's a very popular word at the moment. People are using the word narcissist a lot more than normal. Do people actually know what they mean by it? I don't want to be insulting to people here. Come across as horribly condescending. But do people, not necessarily do they know what narcissism means, but how do they define it? So all good, all good academic present, and I'm not an academic, but all good academic presentation begins with you defining your terms, because narcissist means one thing to one person and another thing to another. Okay. So narcissism comes from Narcissus, the Greek myth, fell in love with his own reflection because he was very beautiful. So narcissism is sometimes used to describe people who are, like me with my hair, very obsessed with their own physical image, how they look physically and present physically. But that's not that's not the medical definition of narcissism, which is why obviously I tend to go more in that direction, being a psychotherapist. So I think more about narcissistic personality disorder, which is a kind of a very precise and specific thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do, actually, I've brought this up on the screen. I'm just going to read through the diagnostic criteria for narcissism, which I brought up on the screen. Now, this comes from a diagnostic manual called the DSM-5. 5 is the edition, so 5 means it's there. So the next one will be DSM-6. And it changes like the weather, changes like the New Zealand and British weather anyway. So every time they review it, some things get thrown out, some things get put in, and some things get revised. So we look at things in different ways. So my understanding is that back along, this wouldn't have been referred to as narcissistic personality disorder. It probably would have been referred to as megalomania. We've lost all these, the mania used to be in the words for all these diagnoses. It's quite an exciting word, isn't it? Mania. They've lost it. I guess it's probably a good thing. No one wants to be perceived as some form of maniac. So I'm going to quickly go through the criteria. Grandiosity with expectations of superior treatment from other people. Continually demeaning, bullying and belittling others. And this is a summary, so if you I haven't actually got this I have got access to the DSM-5, but it's a pain to get into it, so I've just Googled quick summary. Exploiting others to achieve personal gain, lack of empathy for the negative impact they have on the feelings, wishes and needs of other people. Fixation on fantasies, that's interesting, the fantasies thing, of power, success, intelligence, attractiveness, etc. But that's not just, any old daydreaming. Self-perception of being unique, superior, and associated with high-status people and institutions. So that'd be like name dropping. People kind of often, narcissists will throw famous names into the conversation to try and impress you. Need for continual admiration from others, and that's an important one because that's how you can tell. Sometimes it's very difficult to tell the difference between a psychopath and a narcissist because psychopaths, have there's a big overlap basically. But psychopaths, essentially don't give a damn what other people think about them, but narcissists care a great deal what other people think about them. Sense of entitlement, special treatment, and to obedience from others. Intense envy of others and the belief that others are equally envious of them. Okay, so that's narcissistic personality disorder. Now, you can be a narcissist without having narcissistic personality disorder. Because you could say there's a kind of a spectrum of narcissistic traits. So, and I don't think you have to have all of those to get a diagnosis. You have to have at least 5 of those to get. So there's 9 criteria, and you have to have at least 5 to get a psychiatric diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. So you can be narcissistic, and you can be very narcissistic without it being at the level of a personality disorder. So what we're talking about, when you call it a disorder, that's when it becomes very serious. It's like a lot of people will say, oh, I'm a bit OCD. Everybody says I'm a bit OCD because they like to stir their tea a certain way or they do things in a certain way. They're not a bit OCD, they're a bit OC, they're a bit obsessive compulsive, okay? Once these things reach disorder stage, they're serious. Okay, so OCD is actually, a serious condition. It's one of the things that I work with a lot. So it's a very serious condition. If you've got OCD, you'll know about it and you'll be suffering. If you're a little bit obsessive compulsive, you'll just accommodate it. But OCD will ruin your life. OCD will make things very miserable for you. Narcissistic personality disorder is kind of that's to the point where it's diagnosable as a medical condition. So you can be pretty narcissistic before you get to that level. But the qualities that I would use to describe narcissistic behavior would still be those 9 things. Okay, so I wouldn't be kind of talking about somebody that's looking at themselves in the mirror a lot of the time, because that could be something completely different. A narcissist might do that, and a narcissist might not do that. Okay. So I think, a lot of wrong assumptions are made probably about narcissists, who are narcissists and who aren't narcissists. So be very careful with this, I would say. People who are narcissistic, seriously narcissistic, I would say Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the poster boy for narcissism. Okay, now I don't care what your politics are. Donald Trump has all the. Out of 9 criteria, he's got 109. The way he speaks, the way he brags, everything. Okay, I'm not going to get sidelined into Donald Trump, but think Donald Trump as quite an extreme example. So he's not just even your average probably person with a narcissistic personality disorder. He's the granddaddy of people with narcissistic personality disorder. And then think of narcissistic people who don't quite meet the disorder status, but are on a kind of spectrum from not narcissistic at all to getting up to where you get into that diagnosable threshold. Okay, and I would actually say I'm on that spectrum. Okay, so one of the things I suspect that when people are talking about narcissists and being more likely to be possessed, I wonder, are they talking about narcissists or are they talking about arseholes? Okay, are they saying people who are arseholes are more likely to be possessed than people who aren't arseholes? and if you take the theory that like attracts like, that that your belief is that a spirit will draw, a spirit that's got kind of dirty habits will draw to somebody that's got the same kind of habits. I personally think that spiritual entities that sometimes possess people, if that indeed happens, are actually hungry spirits. I don't think they're evil spirits. I think they're spirits that feed off things. So potentially they would draw to people who have the same cravings as they do. So, and some of the videos talk about cravings and addiction a lot. So I can kind of go with that. But I think, I just wonder whether these videos, mainly these people are talking about arseholes and they're calling them narcissists. Okay. Now most narcissists are arseholes, but not all. Okay, there is, you can be a benign narcissist. I know some people with quite strong narcissistic traits, but actually they're, fantastic people. Often some of the most, creative people. I would say nearly all stand-up comedians are narcissistic, because you've kind of got to have that sense of entitlement and grandiosity to put yourself up there and think that people are going to laugh at you. I think that's kind of, sometimes where I haven't, my comedy, because I'm a stand-up comedian, where I've held myself back quite a lot, really, is because I think I'm narcissistic enough to want to do it, but not narcissistic enough to put myself out there continually. I haven't got that narcissistic drive. So some narcissistic comedians, they're real kind of, they'll kind of give me the microphone, they're kind of like that. So narcissism, so not all narcissists are bad. Not all narcissists are narcissistic or have narcissistic personality disorder. Some do, some don't. Some are assholes and some aren't. Some are kind of okay. They might have some annoying quality. They'll be more on the level of being a bit annoying. Okay, so it's like I've got a friend that's narcissist. Is actually one of the most, compassionate, caring people I know, but can just sometimes be a little bit distracted, and a little bit kind of self-absorbed. Is actually very caring, but might not notice that you're bleeding, because they're kind of they're listening to the sound of their own voice, or they're doing, they're absorbed in something. So don't diss all narcissists, okay? Some of the people, if you like comedy, all your comedy heroes will be narcissists. If you like music, a lot of your musical heroes will be narcissists. A lot of your political heroes will be narcissists, okay? Narcissists have done a lot of good for the world. Not all narcissists are arseholes, okay? And not all arseholes are narcissists, okay? So some arseholes are psychopaths, and some arseholes are just arseholes. Okay, so I think we need to kind of be clear. What do you mean by a narcissist? And I think, with these videos, I'd really love to see a definition of what you mean. And it's okay if you mean something different. I like I say, I like to use, basically those criteria. And that's what I think of as a narcissist. If you think of a narcissist as something else, there is a lot of freedom in language, and there are different contexts. So if you see narcissists in a different way, if you see narcissists as maybe self-centered people, vain people, perhaps, then that's fine. But that's a different definition of narcissism. So I think it would be good to say that, really. So I think really this whole subject needs a bit of clarity. It needs I'm not sure we can get kind of scientific on it, but I think we need to be a bit less woolly. So okay, so no one has really. So the only arguments I've really heard for spirit possession and narcissism to go hand in hand are that the demonic characteristics are very similar to the characteristics of the narcissist. So again, it takes us back to arseholes, really. I don't think that leads us much further forward. There was one video that's a little bit more bold in what it said, which was talking about how they'd come across narcissists who had seemed to intuitively know all their weaknesses. And they thought that was kind of demonically inspired. Now, they didn't go into a lot of detail, because obviously, people are intuitive. I mean, I'm extremely intuitive. I can pick up, especially, being a therapist, that's how I need to be. So I could pick up a lot of things from somebody. And I don't know really how I know. I don't spend too much time thinking about it, really. It's either useful or it's not useful, and usually it's useful. So I use that to help other people. And what they're saying is that these narcissists will use that to harm other people. Now, intuition only goes so far, obviously. Intuition, so somebody said, a narcissist said, I know you've just bought a lottery ticket and I know the serial number. Or started to kind of tell them, precise dates and times of things to do with their family tree that aren't available, in the public arena. Then that would be kind of a little bit more spooky. So maybe they're saying that, which is interesting. Okay, so that is kind of something new. I think the other thing that people are saying, maybe people are basing this on personal experience, but they're not really always saying that. So one of the things that people talk about is a change in appearance. So this is a little bit more credible, in terms of evidence. So they said the skin might turn, sometimes their skin might turn grey, or their face suddenly looks completely different, or their eyes change colour. Somebody was talking about somebody's eyes going black. Now, eyes going black can just be people with big pupils dilating. I've got big pupils. I was a pioneer. I was actually a guinea pig for laser eye surgery. And I had problems with it, and one of the problems I had with it is I had big pupils, so therefore it didn't work as well. So when they did the first eye, they didn't know this. When they did the second eye, they were aware, and they did a slightly different treatment to take into account the fact that I had big pupils. Because if you've got big pupils, and you treat a certain surface area of the eye, and then it dilates, then you're seeing out of untreated portion of your eye, as well as the treated portion, which what it means is, if I see the moon, I see rings around the moon, things as well. So, how did I get onto that? Eyes, yeah, big pupils. So some people have, unusually bigger pupils than others. So I have heard other people talk about pupils. I used to have a friend who had a girlfriend, and he used to talk about when they were having sex that her eyes used to go black, and he used to find it slightly terrifying. But I think her pupils were dilating, during pleasure, and making her eyes go black. I don't think she was a monster or demon possessed or anything like that. She's a perfectly nice woman. I'm possessed by a virus. So. Yeah, and the other thing, this is kind of me coming up with this now, I guess the thing about narcissism, which often doesn't get raised, is narcissists, they do not have high self-esteem. The inflated sense of self is actually a defense mechanism balanced against a very poor sense of self, or almost no sense of self. So I think this maybe has been raised in one of the videos, that perhaps if you haven't got a strong sense of who you are, if it's almost like if there's a house with nobody home, you're more likely to get squatters than a house that's occupied with a busy family. Okay, and their body is like a house with nobody home, or it looks like nobody's home if nothing else. There's a kind of sense of it being vacant. Not a strong sense of occupancy, not a strong sense of self, not a strong sense of identity, and that might leave people at the mercy of invading entities. But that's kind of, they're all the arguments that I can think of, really. So I think there's an arsehole narcissist mix-up, really, that's gone on here. And I also think that this is a bandwagon that people are jumping on. Some things just get popular, and it's fine. It's great to talk about this stuff, but it'd be really great to add some substance to this, really. So and I have commented on a few of these videos and said, well, great video, but where's the rationale? Where's your arguments? Okay. So I guess the only arguments I can really think of is that which apply to ourselves, not to narcissists, is that a nasty spiritual entity would attract to a nasty person, potentially. That might be a rationale. That if the lights are on but nobody's home, you're more likely to get burglars and squatters. And what was the third one? This evidence about physical physical changes, and and maybe maybe there is something in the eyes. Unless you're there, it's difficult to tell, isn't it? Really, is it pupil dilation? Is it you just kind of ask that person to come back, blindfold them in a dark room for 20 minutes, and then kind of have a look at their eyes and see what they're like then. But of course, life's not like that, is it? Really, we can't just practice science on people in a willy-nilly fashion. Okay, so an unusual one. Apologies for all the coughing and spluttering, not very nice, not sorry about that, and my grizzled visage and my vanity. And I will see you in the next one. Rangi Mario.